Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you are all staying healthy and safe during this very unique time. Today, we have three individuals who are very excited to join me and take your questions about how we can get involved while staying home. Now, if schools are open when you get back to them in the fall, you want to be ready and prepared and be better than ever. So I really encourage you to ask some great questions tonight. Now, before I introduce our panelists, I would like to note for those of you who may not know, the Leadership Institute is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. We do not support candidates or campaigns. The views of our speakers this afternoon are their own. All right, now I'd like to introduce our panel this afternoon, beginning with David Blair. David is currently the Executive Director of the Conservative Leadership PAC. Back in 2016, David was the National Director of Youth for Trump. So he brings a lot of experience to the table this afternoon. So David, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. All right, our second guest this afternoon is Cliff Maloney. Now, Cliff is the president of Young Americans for Liberty, the most active and effective libertarian youth organization, advancing liberty on campus and in American electoral politics. Now, YAL's mission is to identify, educate, train, and mobilize youth activists committed to making liberty win. Now, before YAL, Cliff served as the National Youth Director for the Rand Paul presidential campaign and built an apparatus of 507 Students for Rand chapters. So welcome to you, Cliff, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, and our final guest this afternoon is Alexandra Knowles. Alexandra is currently the National Youth Engagement Director at the RNC and most recently served as the Director of Youth Leadership Schools here at the Leadership Institute. So welcome, Alexandra. It is so great to have you with us here. Oh, I think you may be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Carly. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move right into your questions from students in our audience. So to submit a question, please go to the Q&A box. So that's at the lower half of your screen and submit your question there. Now, when you submit your questions, please put your name, your school, the group you're active in on campus, and who your question is for. So guys, I will let you fight over the first question, but this first question comes from Jack at Ohio State University, and he asks, outside of the generic social media and Zoom recommendation, what do you recommend our chapter do to maintain the in-person connective social aspect while at home?
Well, I can take a stab at it, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. But great question, first of all, and thanks, for all of you for joining us. I know we're all trying to figure out, as activists and as campaigners especially, what do we do in kind of this new era of social distancing? It's not a very easy, not an easy answer. We really, what it boils down to, and I'll get to the specific question just here in a moment, but what it boils down to for me is that we have kind of lost what the normal landscape that we find ourselves in with campaigning. Normally, our recruitment apparatus and our organizational apparatus, the technology that we would use to go out and find folks who support us is pretty much upended, right? Like we don't have the ability to go in person, knock on someone's door. We don't have the ability to go onto a college campus and talk to folks. So we're having to replace a lot of the traditional just in-person organizational methods with tools like Zoom and like social media. So it's important to understand really, I think, what those are. They're tools. I mean, like Zoom and anything in social media are tools, just the way that a recruitment table would be a tool, just the way that a walkbook or a slick app would be a tool. So I would say that utilizing them, even though it might seem mundane, everybody keeps saying get on social media, use Zoom. You can use those tools in kind of creative ways. So with Zoom especially, think of that as, I think of it pretty much as a great avenue to continue to do a lot of the things you were doing anyway, just through a different medium using a different tool. So if you were going to have a Wednesday meeting of your leadership, still have that meeting. It's really important to keep up the consistency. If you have 50 members in your group and you don't talk to them for 6 months, or you don't talk to them for, the rest of the summer, they're not going to be around whenever you get back, to campus, right? You're going to have this big fall off. So I think consistency is extremely important, and just continuing to have, and guys, we're going to open back up at some point. This is not a forever. Cliff, I think Cliff's already opening back up. He's going to drop YAL paratroopers like over cities here after a while. But we're going to open back up. This is a pretty temporary thing. And the way that I see it is we're trying to use these tools to maintain until we can get back into the regular world. So consistency, use these tools like Zoom and social media to keep up the consistency of what you were doing anyway. You might not be able to be face to face, but that's real important to kind of keep up what you were planning to do anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. All right. So just a reminder, you guys, if you do want to submit questions, please put them in that Q&A box that is down below. Put your name, your school, where you're from, your group that you're active in on campus, and who your question is for. So this next one, I have Cliff, if you maybe want to take this one. This is from Carlston from the University of Illinois, and he's asking, how can we still engage with new students? Should we be using social media? What are some best practices for that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You guys hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And just David, real quick, I am back on the road. We're alive and we're reopening, so we're hoping the government catches up soon. But it's a great question. I think, look, what David said is spot on, and that you've got to continuously reach people. You can't take this as a time to pause. And so should you reach out to new students? Yes, absolutely. And I think it's very boomer-esque for me to say, use the social media. But the reality is, I'm not talking about just posting content, right? So with your local chapters, when you guys are trying to do outreach, find aligned posts, or if you're putting out content, or go to content where for some reason there are people at your school engaging that could have some sort of alignment with our views. And I'm not talking about asking them to like your page, right? Shoot them a message. Figure out a way to engage with that person directly. Try to set up virtual, cocktail hours, virtual coffee hours. Maybe you do something where, I've seen LI obviously leading on this with some of the speakers that you guys are doing network-wide. So I think there are lots of ways for us to work to reach out to people without, when you say use virtual outreach or use social media, I don't mean by creating some sort of way to get people to engage with your content. I mean taking those that are engaging with your content and getting them a little deeper or more comfortable, or having a conversation that gets them involved with your group. And I'll say this, I think when we reopen, when things start to get back, and even if that means this fall and we're back on campus, things are going to take time because everything came to a halting stop. You want your group to be the group that is a month ahead of everybody else, right? You want your chapter to be ready so that whenever we get to a point, and every state might be different, each locality, each school might be different, but whenever we get to that point, you want to be ready so that that month of transition, when everyone else is just trying to figure out what's the difference between up and down, is your chapter is ready, you've got your membership, you've got a plan, and now you're acting on it. So I think preparing has got to be something we all look at as a top priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, Alexandra, I think this question is perfect for you. So this is from Amelia, who's involved in Turning Point at the University of Virginia. In your experience, what are the biggest mistakes group leaders make while trying to sustain enthusiasm from their members?
Well, great question, Amelia. Thank you so much. I think the biggest mistake that I see group leaders making when trying to sustain enthusiasm is that rather than leaning into the leadership, they kind of pull back and they try to play this cool mom or cool dad role where we're just going to kind of throw our hands up and do whatever we want. It'll be a free-for-all. Think about, if you find yourself in that situation, think about what really initially drew your membership into your club, right? They came to you because they were politically aligned, philosophically aligned with your club's message, and they want to be politically engaged with like-minded students. So give them the opportunity to engage in that exact way. At the Trump Victory team, we have done over 10 million voter contacts in just the past week alone. You know, I think that I want to echo what Cliff and David mentioned. We are not taking our foot off the gas. You know, we're pressing down the accelerator. And I think that club leaders would be really well inclined to do the exact same thing. You know, this is not the time to slow down. And I think that if you exhibit leadership by providing your membership with a plethora of different opportunities to get engaged, you know, whether it's these Zoom meetings, hosting speaker events, getting involved in your local Trump victory or your local campaigns, I think that by providing them with those different resources, they're going to look up to even more and be more invigorated when they get back to campus in the fall.
Absolutely. All right, so our next question, again, I will let any of you take a stab at this. This comes from Missouri State University, Chelsea with the Bears for Life. What are some good ways to fight attrition when I can't always reach some members as easily as running into them on campus?
I'll take it. Dave, you want it? You let me take it.
I'll take a quick stab at it, and then
Sure.
we can all free for all it. Why not? Well, so my quick, kind of point with that, and what I would say is, it's going to be a little bit harder. I mean, if first of all, and I'll just be frank, your the plan to fight attrition shouldn't be like, well, I'll see him on campus at some time. Like I'll run into him at some point on campus, and then we'll have a conversation. It does, as a leader, you do need to take really proactive steps to make sure that you're baking in ways to fight attrition. One of the big things that we always teach at Leadership Institute is you need to fight attrition by continually, through your recruitment efforts, identifying new leaders, and then training those new leaders to actually take on leadership positions. So a really big part of that, and what I would recommend you do, is in your current digital recruitment efforts as much as possible, and then your real physical recruitment efforts when you get onto campus, always be looking to see who has leadership potential. The two main characteristics of that being a sustained enthusiasm for your principles, so someone that's really fired up about being pro-life, and then an ability to work with other people, kind of, general social skills and charisma. You can really figure out if someone can work with other people pretty quickly, but try to identify those qualities in freshmen and new people that come into your clubs, and then bake it in that, these people are now, you're going to reach out to them once a week on social media. You might have a leadership call. You're going to make sure that they get involved with all of your speaker events, all of your activities. You have to really do the legwork to bake in a schedule of this is what I'm going to do to reach out to these people. So don't be passive and just hope that you run into them, but be aggressive and active and make sure you get in front of them. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, a couple of points I'll add to that. So the first thing I'd say is, through LI and YAL, one of the things, my favorite lines we've picked up is, you're either growing or you're dying. And obviously that's a little blunt, but it's a reality when it comes to campus recruitment. You're either growing as a chapter, building your membership, or people are falling off. People graduate. We have a guaranteed 4-year, if you're lucky, some people 5 or 6 years, but an attrition rate where you're going to have people that are moving on. There are other priorities, things pop up. So if you're really trying to run a successful group, you've got to figure out ways to combat that. One thing I want to say, though, right now, that we have found to be pretty interesting is most students, most young people, they are looking not just to get back to normal life, but they're looking for something to do. They're looking for some optimism. So we have an event in August that we're excited about, having over 1,000 students. We launched kind of thinking, hey, we'll see what the excitement's like. We've already had over 1,600 students apply. So I share that to you as kind of some encouragement of, if you guys are planning things with your chapter, if you're doing, I know I continuously say these virtual coffee hours or these virtual cocktail hours, if they're of age, these are the types of things people want something to do. So if you're trying to fight the attrition, I think it's not a time where you're going to feel like you're bothering people. People's schedule they're wide open. So I'd use that to your benefit to host events right now, but tap into that energy out there that people want to be doing something right now.
Yeah, and if I may, Carly, I would love to kind of piggyback off what Cliff and David mentioned. One, I definitely agree with Cliff. I think people are absolutely rabid for any social engagement, political or otherwise. I know myself, I'm a social person. I'm going a little bit stir crazy. I think that's part of the reason why, at the Trump Victory Team, we've been able to activate 300,000 new volunteers in the past 2 months. We've been able to make over 30 million voter contacts. Why? Because people are sitting at home and suddenly they are sitting there with nothing to do, but become more politically engaged. So I would encourage student leaders to take advantage of kind of this hunger for involvement and human interaction, to be quite blunt. And then take this moment as well to hone in on your skills. When a more equipped, more well-trained club and base is going to prove to be a more effective club and base when school does reopen in the fall. So take this time to engage with, whether it's Trump Victory or Young Americans for Liberty, or I know Leadership Institute. You guys have been just crushing it with the programming. So on behalf of the conservative movement, thank you for all you've been doing the past 2 months. But encourage your leadership to get involved and get well trained. So when the fall does kick back up, not only are you going to not lose these people, but they're going to be ready to hit the ground running and be really effective activists for your cause.
Absolutely. I couldn't echo that more. All right. So this next question, it's for Cliff. It comes from Kelly from the University of Pennsylvania. Which social media platform is best for organizing college chapters, especially while organizing remotely?
So I'm going to show my age here a little bit at the age of 29. So one of the short answer to that question, it's a great question, Kelly, and you come from a great state, and one might argue the greatest commonwealth. But the easiest answer is go where the people are. And what I mean by that is, and I'm not saying every campus is different, obviously different age groups. Facebook is not what it used to be. Instagram, there's different things you can see with demographics and different age groups. But think about it. You as a normal college student, what is it? Where is it that you are? What are you interacting with? Where are the places that people that you want to get to are spending their time? And I think that it's a simple answer, but a lot of people miss this because they think, oh, well, you don't usually use Instagram for outreach. You can use any of these platforms, even if they don't have a messaging function, the ability to comment on somebody's post and to engage and to start a conversation. But that would be my short answer, is go where there are people. Go where you see that is the spot where people are spending their time, spending their energy, and figure out ways for you to insert yourself into that equation.
Absolutely. All right, Alexandra, I have this next question for you. It's from Sierra from the University of Notre Dame. And she asks, what effects have stay-at-home orders had on door knocking and campaigning? And has it been especially bad with it being so close to the election?
Yeah, great question. And kind of what David mentioned, of course, this virus has completely changed the playing field, right? The standard has changed. The methods in which we interact with one another have completely shifted. But we at the RNC have just adjusted accordingly. So we have overnight, really, we shifted all of our voter contact efforts to completely digital and phone banking operations specifically. That has been honestly astronomical for us. We have seen even increased voter contact, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, increased volunteer engagement. So be encouraged that this stuff is working. And I also would encourage everyone on the call, assuming that most people in here are high school age, college age, or young professionals. Millennials and Gen Z are the best equipped for this type of scenario, right? It's not the boomers who know how to use the Zooms and the Instagram and the Twitter and all that stuff. It's us. We are best equipped to handle this type of situation in terms of engaging with like-minded individuals. So like I mentioned earlier, lean into your leadership here and just know that we aren't taking our foot off the gas. Voter contact is continuing. Obviously, we really hope to be back knocking doors real soon. I'm sure Cliff feels the same way, but we'll get back there eventually, but voter contact is moving full steam ahead.
Absolutely. All right, David, I have this next question for you. It is from Jay. Jay is an online student veteran with Syracuse University, and he is a youth leadership school student. He's a member of his school's College Republicans, and his question is, how can we use the left's social media strategies against them in order to win the war of ideas?
That's a good question. I would say the left has this chronic problem. It's the chronic problem of overreaching. they pretty consistently, I mean, right now we have a really interesting social media landscape where everybody, regardless of if they care about politics or not, is now engaged on a pretty political issue, because eventually if you don't get engaged with government, government gets engaged with you. They're shutting down everybody's business. Everybody is, you know, I can't go out to a restaurant now. I can't buy toilet paper. This is across the board affecting everybody. So everyone is engaged on this particular topic. So we have that to our advantage. And everyone, I just would say that I think the way that President Trump has been handling allowing governors kind of to go forward has been interesting to see, because in a lot of these states, you have governors that are massively overreaching. I'm from Illinois myself, so J.B. Pritzker, for example, is massively overreaching. It's not necessarily science-based. It's just kind of these huge power grabs. And everybody's engaged on that. Everybody's pretty ticked off about it. That is something that we should definitely use to our advantage, because Saul Alinsky said it best. He said, you know, never let a crisis go to waste. The left isn't letting this crisis go to waste. They're trying to, for them, I should say, they're trying to, above protecting people, they're trying to grab a lot of power, and people are starting to see that. So what we need to do is engage on social media. Anywhere that you see kind of a left-wing push on social media. I know Cliff often says, you know, arguing on social media is never a good thing. You know, it's generally speaking useless, and I would generally speaking say don't argue on social media. But we do have to realize a lot of people right now are engaged on these platforms. There's nowhere else they're getting engaged. It's either basically they're watching CNN, MSNBC, getting their news from Facebook, Twitter, you know, or Instagram. So we have to use their overplayed hand kind of against them. I think Young Americans for Liberty has been putting out a lot of wonderful content on this. I know many different organizations out there have been putting out great content, the RNC as well, on just showing and exposing what's happening. You know, Cliff, I saw on your Facebook a couple of videos of people getting arrested for opening up a gym, doing regular things, going to the beach. You get thrown in jail. The more that we can expose that and expose the left's heavy-handed, draconian response to this, the more people are going to see it for what it is. And I think that's kind of our responsibility as activists on social media, is to just expose what they're doing. We don't necessarily have to do much more than that. And I think that a lot of people are doing a good job of it. So keep that up.
Carly, you mind if I jump in?
Absolutely, please.
So it's been probably about 3 years I've been on this push of pretty much doing anything is better than wasting your time on social media arguments. And what I mean by that is, you know, a lot of times, and this is something I actually think the left is better at, sadly, is harnessing time and energy to do things that are worth your time and energy. And so when I say that, look, if somebody wants to put up good content, quality content, our rule at YAL is this: we want stuff that's principled, but also shareable. It's very easy to put up clickbait, and it might not have the principles and the things we're trying to promote as a message. It's also easy to put up something that's very boring. Maybe there's, you know, some professor talking in a room, the camera is zoomed way out, it's not engaging. It's very principled, but it's not shareable. And so one of the things for people that are trying to put up content, I would really encourage you to try to follow that rule, finding things that are going to drive home the principle, but being able to present them in a way that are shareable. Now, I have to agree with what David said. I think this opportunity right here, with all of the COVID madness, is people are starting to ask serious questions. And when I say people, I don't mean us on this webinar. I don't mean people that are involved in the political process. I'm not talking about activists at all. I'm talking about the normal people that usually never comment on your Facebook posts that are political, that are now all of a sudden chiming in. Some of them should scare the heck out of you. I've been kind of taken back by a lot of my middle school teachers who all of a sudden are engaging, and you know they're kind of screaming and saying that they can't believe people would be protesting. But what's happening is this is creating a conversation. And anytime there's a conversation, we do want to engage, right? This is where you do want to put content out. You do want to tap into that energy. And the conversation right now is, should a governor or should a mayor or one man or one woman in a governor's mansion get to decide if you should leave your house. We always say this at YL. The objective of all of our activism is to get people to ask the question, what is the proper role of government? Think about that. This crisis right now, of my entire lifetime, that question is now being asked by normal people every single day. It's being talked about at dinner. So I think it's our job to figure out ways. David, you mentioned some of the content we're putting up. Everybody needs to be doing this, putting up content, driving that conversation, because if there's ever a time to get involved in social media, arguments, we'll call them, I'd rather call them conversations, now's the time to do it because people are interested. We have an audience, and I think people are honestly curious. What is the proper role of government? And for the first time in their lives, they're thinking about that.
And Carly, if I may, I have a little bit of FOMO on this question, so I definitely want to engage if possible. I think definitely agree. We have an incredible opportunity to really share our principles, enlighten people to conservatism given this crisis and the fact that everyone is constantly on their phone because they have nothing else to do. But something that, speaking of the less social media tactics, something that they've always been really good at are being sheeple. And they have subscribed to groupthink for decades now, and they're very good at rallying behind one another. And we see that on social media. We see them all pile on takes that they don't like or cancel culture, what have you. I think that what we can do to kind of counteract that, and this sounds really corny, but just be supportive of one another on social media. If you see someone that you agree with philosophically, go out of their way to kind of post about who they're supporting in this election or how they feel on a certain piece of legislation. Do your part as just a friendly fellow conservative. Give them a like, give them a retweet. If you are hosting these kind of digital coffee hours like Cliff mentioned, be sure to share those on social media. Don't shy away. We have a real opportunity right now. Let's strike while the iron's hot.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a really great question next for Cliff from Kenna at Grand Canyon University. So she says, we have just learned that we may be limited to meeting once a month, and it may not be possible to table, which is a huge part of our chapter. There has been very little interest in Zoom events our local chapters have put on. What can we do to gain interest or find ways around the administration's strict guidelines?
Yeah, so I got to be careful how I say this and make sure I'm cordial about it. As we always say, you don't need permission to recruit on campus. Now, I want to look into whether it's public, and pretty sure Grand Canyon is a public school. But the idea being, listen, if we come back and let me start by saying this, safety to me is the most important thing. And safety is a subjective conversation. And so as a hardcore liberty lover, I would leave that with each individual. Right? So each individual, all of our chapter members, our chapter leaders, we've been very open about this at YAL. If somebody doesn't feel safe recruiting or they're in a position, that's totally up to them. And I would not push them to be in a position they don't feel safe. But if you want to get out there on campus and you want to recruit, and your school was trying to say something about, well, you can only reserve a table once a month, or you can only do X or only do Y, and within reason, that just doesn't add up. I'd encourage them to go out and do it. Heck, I'd be willing to sue the school if it makes sense. We're not afraid to back down, or we're not afraid to stand up. But I think you should be prepared to put a plan together that is reasonable, that is rational for the fall semester when it comes to events, when it comes to recruiting. And I just think that most people, it's not going to be what the rules are. It's going to be the atmosphere, right? It's going to be the environment. As I'm back on the road this week, kind of traveling the country, I've realized that. It's kind of a powerful thing. It's one of the powerful things about America is we believe in local control. And so while there might be different rules, I happen to be in Kentucky and Ohio this week, so it's been a little interesting. But it's about the local environment. And I think you need to play it by ear based on what are the people around you looking for? And is it a positive experience? I would hope that when we get back to campus in the fall, people aren't hesitant to come up and talk to individuals. Right? I would think people, and especially, look, this is a younger demographic, right? We're healthier, should be a little more, willing to take some risk. But I think the environment will be there so that we can talk to people, we can go out and recruit them we can engage with them. And so I don't want to say completely ignore the rules, but what I think you should do is look at your environment, see what people on campus would be okay with, build your engagement off that, and then go out and execute it.
Absolutely. All right, David, I have this next question for you. It's from Edward with the University of Minnesota Conservatives. What are your thoughts on online activism? How could I engage my group members in doing some sort of activism? I can't exactly do a virtual free speech ball.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to try, a virtual free speech wall. That could probably get off the rails pretty quick. But what I would say is, so the beginning of any semester is really any good organization. And I work with youth coordinators all over the country. The Conservative Leadership PAC places them on races all over the country. And we do this pretty much every election cycle for the most hotly contested federal races. And the formula that we use kind of for success in building a group and sustaining that group to be successful for a candidate is you start off the semester in kind of a recruitment and organization phase. What that means is your priority, your primary function at that time is to identify, recruit, organize, and then activate new members and folks coming into your organizations. So a large part of that is really engaging your current membership. So it sounds like you have plenty of current members that are just looking to get them engaged in some way and kind of keep them coming back to your group. One of the things I would say to do is you got to give them a target to hit. You have to give them something to do. Right now, I have a young man down in a race who is, I think he's got like 50 some odd interns that are making tens of thousands of phone calls every single week, tens of thousands of voter contacts every single week. And they're really kind of turning and burning because they have a target to hit. They have something to do. People are naturally driven to do something productive. Alexandra is mentioning her numbers, like people want to do something. So I would turn that natural productive energy towards your goal anyway of recruiting more members. The way that you would go about doing that, this time Cliff mentioned it before, is throughout all your social media platforms, especially Facebook, messaging students like you would walk up to somebody on your campus, like you would walk up to them and say, hey, what do you think about abortion? What do you think about guns? What do you think about Donald Trump? Do the same thing on social media, just send them a message. Then, and I'm going to get in the weeds a bit, but you walk them through kind of a messaging strategy known as the Facebook 4-step or the Maloney 4-step, the Fatal 4-step, depending on who you ask. But you walk them through this kind of messaging strategy, get them on the phone, get them, actually committed to helping out your organization. And that's how you recruit and put your members, train them how to do that, send them to a Leadership Institute training on that. We've got them. And then send them out to do that, check in with them weekly, give them incentives, but direct that energy in a positive way, and they'll stay engaged and they'll stay involved. Make it a competition as well. That's very important.
Right. Alexandra, I have this next question for you. It's from Joanna. She asks, what advice do you have for graduating seniors who were involved in campus groups such as Turning Point, who are looking for that next step to work in politics?
Oh, well, let me just say congratulations to all the graduates that may be on this call today. I've been seeing all these canceled graduations, high school, college. My siblings are going through it. It just breaks my heart. So congratulations to all the grads. I know this is a really tough situation as folks look for summer internships or even just launching their career. I think one thing I would encourage, these graduating seniors is that, yes, unfortunately, most jobs are drying up right now, but election day is November 3rd, come heck or high water. So campaigns are still staffing up. I know we at the RNC just announced we are hiring 300 people before June. So there are campaign jobs out there. I think this is a really great way if you are just now graduating, regardless of whether or not you see yourself as a career campaigner, a campaign cowboy, if you will. There is so much to be learned by getting involved on a campaign. You learn industriousness, hard work, There are so many facets of campaigning, from data to finance to communications. There is a skill for every single person in the public policy process and the political movement to learn on a campaign. So I think take advantage of that opportunity. I would also take this moment of, as you search for a job, to just do some personal career trainings, whether it's through Leadership Institute. I know that, Carly, you're doing the Youth Leadership School right now. I am a graduate myself, highly recommend that to everyone who's interested in the public policy process. Take Leadership Institute trainings. My job as the Youth Engagement Director at the RNC is to expand the youth base. And the way I do that, obviously, is fostering relationships with our conservative allies. But the second tier of that is making sure that our volunteers, our team members, are equipped through training. Training is an integral part of any career arc. So take this moment as you search for jobs to really hone your skills, figure out where your place in the movement is, and the best way you can do that is by taking as many trainings as you can.
Absolutely.
And Carly, if you don't mind, I hop in that question just a little bit. So something that I've experienced kind of running the conservative leadership pack and talking to these campaigns day in and day out, there are many opportunities out there for graduates. I mean, really, there's the same, at least, for my organization, for the campaigns I talk to, it's the same amount of need that there's ever been in campaigns. Right now is not, and here's the thing, as a graduate, you might have to be a little creative. You might have to, reach out to folks and be willing to maybe relocate. That's one of the big things that I tell people, recent graduates. If you're saying, I want this specific job with this specific salary, 5 minutes down the block from where I grew up, and I'm only going to work, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, then you're not going to find a job. But if you say, hey, I'm willing to take a chance, I'm willing to go give it my all on a campaign for X number of months, then there are tons and tons and tons of opportunities out there. And I'd be happy to give my email out to anybody looking, to hear more about those types of opportunities, or even, just get it general career advice on that, because, a good movement takes care of its own. So if there are conservatives out there looking for positions, guys, there are positions. You just have to be willing to take them and work hard at them.
Yeah, and Carly, I'll say this. Not to plug David here and give him too much credit, but the reason I'm here today was I literally took a job as a youth coordinator. I don't know if David knows this. I'm pretty sure he knows this. With his PAC back in 2014 for a congressional candidate out in California. And I think there is this weird situation in the political realm where there are a lot of people who say they want to work, and there's a lot of campaigns who say they need talent, and that consistently is the case. And so there's some sort of disconnect. And I think one of the disconnects we find is it is a grind. It is not, you show up day one and you're a campaign manager. And I think a lot of folks also have this idea of, I want to go into politics. There's a staff side and there's a candidate side. And there are people that make the crossover from staff to candidate. But these opportunities that Alex and David are mentioning, they're raw opportunities to get your hands in the mud and start to understand how the process works. But you have to be willing to travel. You have to be willing to take risks. And the political job sphere, it just doesn't fit into your typical mold, right? We run a program, Operation Win at the Door, and I literally call them warriors, the people that we have as election coordinators, because it is a difficult job, right? The idea, that is why it's a cutthroat environment, because we are adjudicating power, right? We are literally having people trying to fight to make the rules that we live under. And so this is a very, very tenacious atmosphere. And so I think when people think, I don't know if I want to move there, dive in. There are plenty of opportunities. And by the way, of any industry, this is one of the ones where you can move up so quickly, and you can find yourself building things, doing things in terms of all the different sectors of a campaign. These are startup campaigns with a guaranteed end date. Even a presidential campaign, when they win, even if they win, let's look like Trump in 2016. David, the campaign's over. Yeah, they moved to a transition. But what I'm saying is these are startup companies with a guaranteed end date. They're very fluid. Things are being built. I mean, it really is. It feels like Silicon Valley on a lot of these campaigns because, it's incentive-based. There aren't processes in place. Get involved with a campaign, learn the basics, start to build some of those processes in a way that helps your campaign. And you'll start to, when I developed the Maloney 4-step, that was literally during my time in that 2014 campaign, taking what I learned at YAL as a state chair, using it in the field, but starting to write it down and build a process. The more you do that with these opportunities, they're out there. People just have to be willing to go and do it and try to be effective.
Yeah, Cliff, I figured I was going to have you start writing our next letter to our donors off of that. You just jot that down, please.
Let me know.
And Carly, if I could add one more thing.
Absolutely, go for it.
To really drive home this point. Any person that you look up to in politics most likely got their start in a campaign. Most likely at one point in time, cut their teeth, learn their skills, learn their place in the movement by working on a campaign. So I can't express enough how important this is. And we're all here to be a resource to everyone on this call. And just a reminder, the last time that you had the opportunity where there's an incumbent Republican president in office, and now you can then campaign for that person or other conservatives across the country. This is a pretty, I know this word is completely overused at this point, but unprecedented time for young conservatives to really cut their teeth. The opportunities are pretty much endless at this point if you're willing to work for it, like Cliff said.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a few more really great questions. I'm going to go to this one next. Cliff, this is for you. It's from Chris from the University of Virginia. He says, my chapter heavily relies a great deal on summer fundraising for our fall semester activities. What's an effective way to fundraise in this difficult economic climate?
I think the first thing to do is make yourself visible. So I know LI does some great training on how to fundraise for your chapter, and kind of talking about having some sustainability locally, which is very important. I mean, reach out to YAL, reach out to LI, whatever your national organization is. That's why we exist, to provide these materials and provide support. But if you are fundraising locally, I think the best thing to do is we believe in incentive structure. Your incentive is to showcase the efforts that you're making, and to be able to do that in a way that you can demonstrate to a local funder, listen, while everybody else was sitting back, we took this opportunity to lead. We have about, I want to say 22 YAL chapters now that have been a part and taken advantage of some of these protests that are happening across the country. And it's one of those things. I mean, I'm proud of these students for standing up. Once again, they're making the choice to do that. And it's just one of those things. I think if you can showcase that when there was an opportunity, that you're fulfilling the mission of going out, educating people on these ideas, there are plenty of opportunities right now to do that. And I think the thing most funders want is they want a plan, and they want a plan where they can clearly understand measurable results. And that, to me, I think so many people miss. But as a local chapter, it's even easier because you can be so specific because it's your campus. And there are certain things you can literally show them your schedule for the semester. So I think the best thing to do is be someone who is continuing to be visible, make your chapter as visible as possible, taking action during this, but then have a plan with measurable goals, measurable results, and present that to a funder in a way where it's like, listen, we're in the middle of a so-called pandemic, but we're taking action. And that's why we'd love for you to fund us, because we're going to create more impact now than we would have, in any other circumstance. So I think there's a way to kind of thread that needle if you can show them that you guys are taking action and that you have an effective plan.
All right, this next question, I think each of you may be able to shed a little light here, but I'll start with Alexandra. It comes from Nicole at the University of Cincinnati, and she asks, now that it's summer, what is the best thing I can do to get involved and make a difference with a bunch of time on my hands and no job due to COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that, as we mentioned earlier, just don't take your foot off the gas and really lean into this opportunity and this kind of downtime. If you're in that downtime mode where you're looking for the job that's right for you, stay engaged, whether that's just making phone calls, hosting these meetings, whatever it may be. Just don't give up, and don't take this moment as an opportunity to put your feet up, turn on Netflix, and rewatch Tiger King for the 50th time. What is that doing for your career? What is that doing for the conservative movement? It's really critical that everyone understands that we're all in this moment together, this unprecedented moment together, and we're here to be a resource to each one of you. So definitely put your nose to the grindstone and keep going.
All right, this next question, it comes from,
Carly? Sorry.
Did you want to add? Go for it.
Yeah, do you mind if I add just a little bit to that?
Absolutely,
I wasn't clicking up on the mute button. But yeah, so again, great question. And to piggyback off what Alexandra said just a little bit, we've been talking about how much opportunity there is out there. One thing I would say specifically to do, even if, let's say that you don't get connected with a national resource, you don't get connected, in an organization, is you can literally just go to any campaign locally, walk in their doors and say, hey, I would like to volunteer. I don't know of a campaign that exists on this planet that wouldn't say, absolutely, come right on in and be pumped that you did it. But if you do want to go, take a step farther and go into it professionally and, do this and this could be a great time for a career transition. I just got off the phone with somebody who had lost one job in more of the nonprofit sphere due to COVID, but this is a great time now for them to make the transition into the paid campaign professional side of things. And there's tons of opportunity in that. And like Cliff was saying, you get your foot in the door, there is very, very quick upward mobility for people who have merit. It's a total meritocracy. A lot of times in campaigns, you sink or swim based on your talent. So I would say if you're looking to make that step, there are lots of organizations you should reach out to. Any of the national organizations that are on this call would be great, and I'm sure that we're all resources here. So your local campaign, walk into the door and just say, hey, where do I get started?
All right, so we have a few more questions in, so I'm going to go to this next one for David. It's from Jacob at the University of Virginia, and he says, what do you think activism will look like on campus when they open back up?
I imagine that there's going to be so I think for a little while there's going to be a bit of a transition period of, it's almost going to be like every time a state opens up, right? There's this little bit of a transition period where we dip our toe in, and then we don't get rushed away in the water and a shark doesn't eat us, and then we say, okay, we're going to put our foot in. And then once people start to see that we're not going to get struck by a meteor the second we walk outside, I think that it's going to go back to a lot of normalcy, right? People don't want to be quarantined. They don't want to be in this situation. So when they see that, hey, things are going to be okay. And we see this with a lot of the states opening up right now where things don't look like it's, complete pandemonium. The whole reason for this quarantine was to flatten the curve. I think we definitely did that. I mean, the data bears that out, right? When these states start to open back up, they realize, hey, we're not going to all fall into a pit if we go outside. So the campuses will do the same thing. The college administrators, for the most part, I would say, are scared, spineless, weak, and really are worried about bad things that can be attributed to them, accountability. If someone gets sick, they're more worried about the accountability of, oh, I opened up my campus too soon, someone got sick. I think once they see that that's not going to be the case in many areas, that things are going to wind up being okay, then we'll transition back into a regular campus. Activism in that weird transition period may look a lot like going into, your local Home Depot right now, or walking into Walmart. You might have to wear a mask. I imagine that, again, there will be a major overreach and some silly heavy-handedness that comes out of this. Paul Blart, the mall cop, might be standing between you and someone at your table with a 6-foot yardstick saying that you can't get any closer. But that will abate eventually. and you're just going to go back to life as normal, I think. Now in that weird transition period, still get out there, do everything you can to be as effective as you possibly can, but understand that life will go back to normal eventually. It's not going to wind up being this way 5, 10, 15 years down the road or anything like that. So if you need to get masks, get masks. If you need to stand 6 feet apart, stand 6 feet apart. But still get out on campus. Don't throw up your hands and say it's too hard. You still have absolutely got to do it. You have a responsibility to your principals to go out and do that as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. A few more questions. This next one, Cliff, I have it for you from Sam at Florida State University. And he asks, should our activism purposely push back against university policies if we believe they are unconstitutional?
So I would say yes. I mean, I think you want to be rational and you want to kind of see what the environment is. But we've been very firm about this. We have a program called the National Fight for Free Speech Campaign. We've actually won 60 of these where we've got incidents that happen, sometimes proactive, sometimes reactionary to us getting shut down, or the university having some just egregious policy. But I will say that now more than ever, especially right now, actually, I mean, for anyone listening out there, if you're looking for something to do, get in touch with ADF, get in touch with FIRE, work with LI and some of these activist groups to really look at your campus speech codes. And some, I mean, if, you know, the question is a great question, and I'm assuming when they say unconstitutional policies, they mean in terms of recruiting. So, you know, and hosting events and hosting speakers. So I think right now we've launched something where within our National Fight for Free Speech campaign, we are sending policy memos, legal memos, because university administrators, they're getting paid, but they ain't doing much. And so it's kind of this weird time where instead of setting up some formal meeting like we normally would or threatening to sue them, we're kind of sending these memos proactively and saying, listen, you know, you have these unconstitutional policies on the books. Don't worry. We've identified it. We've got the changes. Just make these changes. You know, I know you guys are not busy at the moment, so feel free to knock it down now and let's get it taken care of. But I think in the fall, I think it will become something where certain states we have major problems and certain states it's completely fine, both with policy, but also how the environment is based on that policy. I think you see this in certain states. Like in certain states, certain employees will be pretty nasty towards you if you're not wearing a mask. In other states, it's like, you know, nobody's wearing them. So it becomes kind of I don't want to say the new normal, I don't like that term, but it's the accepted normal. And I think what will happen is, and hopefully, if there are issues, we not go after them, but we get it resolved right away. And that kind of sets a precedence. But I think you're going to have to try to maneuver on your campus. But what I fear is that universities will do what they typically do, which is like the University of California system figures out a way to shut down speakers or to silence ideas, typically our ideas in the conservative and libertarian minds. And then the rest of the country starts to adopt that. Like, hey, that's a good idea. So I would really keep an eye out to see what tactics are used to dictate what speech can be heard, what speech can't be heard, what ideas can be heard, what ideas can't be heard. And let's try to make sure we tackle that together before it starts to spread to other campuses. But mark my words, it's a great question because I would bet the mortgage that you will start to see some sort of policy come out as a way to help students or for the safety of everybody, but really it's dictating what ideas are heard and what ideas are not heard.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it does look like we are approaching our time limit here this afternoon. So I do want to thank Alexandra, David, and Cliff for coming on and sharing your experiences, your advice on how we can stay active during quarantine and really get ourselves ready to go fall 2020. So Alexandra, David, Cliff, would any of you like to say anything before we conclude this afternoon?
I would like to say one thing, yes. So one of the things that's very important in politics is that you establish a good credit rating whenever it comes to your word. If you give your word on something, if you say you're going to do something, you need to follow through on that. And it's extremely important, I think, to be somebody that can follow through on if it's an incentive you've given an activist to, hey, if you make 1,000 phone calls, I'm going to make sure you get this, gift card, or you're going to get some one-on-one time with the candidate, or if you promise maybe an organizer at the Leadership Institute that if they get 100 shares on their Facebook post about this event, that you'll share a Tiger King background for your Zoom, that you do that. So I actually, many of you maybe saw this on social media, had over 100 people share a link to this actual webinar. So Kelton Clarity, I'm going to keep my word, and I am going to share a different virtual background for you for this last question. So there you go. This is my Tiger King background, keeping my word in politics. Hopefully everybody keeps up with that. All right. That's it for me.
I'm so glad. Yes, Cliff.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say, I appreciate everybody doing this. And I appreciate the activists. I always say that us on the call, it's like an inverted pyramid. We're way at the bottom. We are the furthest thing from the real action, which is reaching new people with the ideas and principles of liberty. So I always say this, all the work that we do, most of it is talk. The real work and walking the walk are the folks on campus. So if you're looking for a way to get involved, we'd love to have you at YAL. We've got a lot of opportunities, obviously, this cycle, but also just on campus in general. I mean, this is about reaching new people. That's why we're all here. We're motivated by these ideas. So I think we owe it to ourselves, as Morton would say, to figure out how we become the most effective activists. And that's the question that's to drive us every day. How do we become more effective? Appreciate you guys having me.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I would just love to echo what Cliff just said. All three of us, we don't exist, our jobs don't exist without all of the youth activists on this call and out there fighting on the college campuses for their principles. So we're so grateful to you. I think an overused kind of cliche is that the youth is the future or something like that. You guys are the leaders. You're not just the future. You're leading right now. So we look to you for guidance on a lot of this stuff, and you are what keeps us going. So thank you for all that you have done and will continue to do on campuses and throughout 2020. And please let me know how I can be a resource to you guys. Thanks, Carly.
All right. Well, I thank the three of you for joining me this afternoon. I would like to thank everyone else that joined us, and I do hope that I can see you back at many more of our upcoming trainings, events, and our speaker series here from LI. So to find all of our upcoming events, please check out our website, leadershipinstitute.org. I will make 2 quick notes. Next week on Wednesday, May 27th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be having a town hall with Marco Rubio. So that's going to be very, very exciting. So I do hope I see all of you back for that. There is a survey in the chat box if you wouldn't mind taking it and let us know how we're doing, how you enjoyed this afternoon's event. But with that, I will say thank you once more to our lovely panelists. Thank you for sharing all of your insight. Enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe, and wash your hands. So take care, everyone.
Thanks so much for watching this video. To watch our latest video, click here. And to make sure you don't miss any future videos, be sure to subscribe.